want to stream a day or two later like everybody else does, punish them for not being.
It's a good idea, and that would give us a chance to edit out anything that I shouldn't have said or could have said better. Yep. Let's have a word of prayer before we start. You know, we are ushering in the Sabbath together, which is always a special occasion. And so being able to come before the throne of grace and to drink deeply of his presence is a great privilege. So let's bow our heads. Loving Father, God, you've brought us through another week. We're so grateful. Thank you that you are bringing us into the rest that we find as we place our faith and trust and hope in Jesus Christ. Thank you. You are our creator. You're our sustainer. You're our redeemer. And as we enter into these hours, we get to remember that you are the source of all good things. It's in you that we live and move and have our being. So God bless us. Bless us with your presence, with your power, with your grace. And may this time be special, a special time to reflect on your character and to learn more about your mission that has taken place throughout the world and that we had an opportunity to be part of here in these last few weeks. So bless this time. We're grateful for your love. In Jesus' name, amen. So I'll try not to make this too educational, but I thought it would be good to do a little geography review here. So if you're looking at a globe here, and of course, Peru there is kind of tucked underneath Ecuador. And so you can see as we zoom in here a little bit, you've got Ecuador it's the next country north of Peru. And then to the east, you've got Brazil. And then a little bit further south, you have Bolivia. And then on the very bottom, you can see a little piece there, and I think that's Chile. And so you have a very interesting country in that you have the high Andes going down the west or the eastern side there. And then if you were to drive up and over the Andes, you would come down into the Amazon. And so you have beach, because it's right along the beach, and it's beautiful, right there near Ecuador. So you've got, here we have a huge swing between summer and winter, where you have, several hours difference in the length of the day. I asked them there, they have about a 30-minute variance there between what they call not winter and summer, but dry and wet season. Depending on where you are, that dry or wet is more dramatic, more pronounced. In Lima, for example, I had no idea. Lima, a huge city, about over 9 million people. That's the capital of Peru. But guess how much rainfall they have on average per year in Lima? Okay, 20 inches. That's a good guess. Per year, yeah. Per year, yeah. 1.2 inches. On the coast, yeah, 1.2 inches is what they've averaged, and this has been for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. They know this because there's some ruins there that are non-baked adobe bricks, so just sun-dried adobe bricks that have been there for multiple hundreds of years. And they said all it would take is one heavy rain to wash those ruins and ruin the ruins. And so in several hundred years, they haven't had even one real rain. Lima, yep, correct. Yep, Lima's right there on the coast, right on the ocean. So it's very... To the Andes, I'm not sure how many hundreds of miles that would be, but it's going to be on your east extreme of the country. So it's a little distance. Oh yeah, totally. So you have Amazon, you have high Andes, and I'm saying high Andes. I'll show you some pictures of that. But then you have out to the edge, you've got desert with Lima. It's very strange though, because it's desert, but it's also very humid. And so I think that's why it's able to work. You see, like you drive along the beach and there's flowers and everything. And I think it's just soaking in the humidity from the ocean. So yeah, anyways, a little bit about the location there. This was the arrival. This was the greeting team that met some of our team at the airport as they arrived. And right here, so Cusco, it was near. Well, that's where we flew into. So a lot of us flew into Lima and then over to Cusco or into Colombia, Bogota, and then flew into Cusco. And you'll see that's just a little bit east of Lima. We were a little bit north of Cusco in a town called Carao. And so Corao. Corao was the name of the town, and that was, I think, Quechuan. Hey, all right. Sweet. So these Tony and family, Liam got a new hair color, it looks like. or really got in the sun for a while there, but sweet. Thanks for coming. So if you have any contributions, I'll just stand up and I'll include you. So we're doing a little bit of geography review here. Yep. So we were a little bit north of Cusco. We were staying in the town of Pisac, and I'll show some photos of that. But we were doing work in Corao. And so this was the first Sabbath there in Corao, and this was some of the church members that were welcoming us as we arrived there. You'll see a bunch of cars over to the left because there's a marketplace that only takes place on Sabbath, and it's a huge open market there with these roofs that they put out all of their goods, all of the local farmers and textiles and things like that will put out their goods there. So we were just arriving, we were just getting kind of settled in, and we had put one day in on the work site, and then it was Sabbath, and we were getting ready to launch a evangelistic series that I was going to be preaching, and a children's what would it be? A VBS, right? A Vacation Bible School for the kids. And so we went out into this market that first Sabbath and passed out a bunch of invitations to both of those activities. And that was really fun because they were very receptive and very interested in, and if they didn't get a little piece of paper, they were kind of flagging you down to make sure we didn't miss them. So they were speaking Spanish. I was speaking Spanish with them. What was interesting is a lot of the more locals they didn't speak in Spanish in their home. They spoken Quechua, and so one of the church members was actually kind of following me around and translating as I was speaking in Spanish into Quechua. So I would say, bienvenido, que sean bienvenidos. Vamos a estar haciendo algo de evangelismo aquí. Vamos a estar teniendo los hijos y cosas. So I'd say that my little spiel, and they would kind of look at me with a blank stare on their face, and then the church member would say it all in Quechua. And they would go, oh, okay, good. I was like, oh. So I wasn't sure how much they used Spanish or not. They seem to do kind of in the same way that you'll see kind of on the southern border in the United States. You'll see them speaking Spanglish. And that's what it seemed like they were doing, was they were speaking Quechua with Spanish mixed in, because I would catch a few words here and there, but then the other stuff was completely foreign to me. So yeah, that's Cody Susan's passing out an invitation to one of the older gentlemen there. This was our first Sabbath, so you can see the walls of the cement walls starting to go up on the sides there, and then of course the cement blocks that we still needed to place there. And then I was teasing them, saying, hey, what do you guys think? This is pretty nice, right? Having nice views and get to feel the nice breeze. Can we be done at this level? What do you guys think? They weren't too keen on the idea. So we had a beautiful Sabbath worship together with them. I preached in Spanish and tried to throw in a few English words there so that the English-speaking people weren't completely lost. You'll see, so this is their traditional garb there. You can see it very colorful. And this is alpaca. And so alpaca, very, very neat. In fact, we forgot to bring our alpaca stuff to show you. But it's a very versatile, right? Just like wool, wool, it's a version of wool, right? But keeps you cool in the hot and keeps you hot in the cool. Just amazing. And that's what they make a lot of their garb out of there. Correct. Yeah, and I was going to show you that. I'll have to bring it some other time. But yeah, you squeeze it and it feels cold. And that's how you can tell if it's authentic or if it's synthetic. Yeah, it was kind of cold. I don't know what the average was, but it wasn't getting much above 60. And then it was dropping down. I think we had frost on one or two mornings there. 10,700 feet was where we were building and then in Pisac, where we were staying, was 9,000 something. So it's 1,000. So a 1,000-foot difference where we were staying. But so a lot of people were taking altitude medicine, and we were pacing ourselves. It was actually remarkable. I'd just be standing there, not doing anything, and all of a sudden I'd be like, trying to catch my breath. It was the weirdest thing. Just random times, and it was hard to catch your breath. So if you're carrying around heavy things.
The average low was 40 to 43.
Okay.
And this is their fall, so they're below the equator, so they were just done with summer, and it was approaching their, in July and August is their winter, and they do have a little bit of frost, but not very much snow there. So they can grow produce, and they have some greenhouses, and they can grow year-round.
So yeah, lows around 40, 41. I'm saying it again just for the online people if they are. But this is great. I'm so glad you showed up. Get some more of the details. Tony did quite a bit of research, and actually might be able to get him to share a little bit of some of as we get in a little bit further. In fact, I should probably keep moving here. So this is the evening meetings. We started the evangelistic series. This was so in the school building that was just across the road from the place we were building, the church building. They were able to they said this was very rare. It was very rare that they were able to get permission from the municipality to be able to have these meetings in a public school building. And so they were pretty excited about that. You can see this was one of the better attended nights, probably 45, 50 people there. And so I was preaching a series on the gospel and was telling them about, how God is, it was the announcement of the arrival of a new king. And this was the gospel message, and that this king was powerful, and that he was, had authority and power over the elements, and that we didn't need to be afraid. And Maria, who was the lady that was hosting us there and had done a lot of the preliminary arrangements so that we could do this mission trip, she was sharing with us and confiding in me, saying, the church members are really nervous. How many of you guys have been part of an evangelistic series where you're nervous that nobody's going to show up? Right? Well, I could fully empathize. I said, this is a very difficult area. It's very Catholic, and we're not so sure anybody's going to show up. And so they were kind of dragging their feet when she would make requests and things. They were like, they just didn't want the embarrassment of doing all of this work and inviting everybody and having nobody show up. So when there was some 50 guests over the week, it was tremendous. It was a huge blessing. Now, they came in and shared some music, and I think this is a video here, so we'll see if we can hear this. Corey, do you have the sound back there?
오늘부터 이맘수 아티군 그 하트 나봐요 그이가 좀 잡아 기지스다.
I think he's speaking Quechua. Yep. Anybody recognize the tune there? Yep. So they sang it. They actually sang it in English also. They sang it in Spanish, Quechua, and English. And you can see some of the traditional instruments that they use there. This was actually one of my highlights. It was, so we had some of the volunteers. They brought a bunch of reading glasses, which we don't think much of. You can probably pick them up for a few dollars down at the gas station or in the supermarket. But so we had, unfortunately, we had many more that didn't end up making it there. But we had quite a few eyeglasses, or these reading glasses, and a little chart where they could come and tell us where they could read up to that before it getting blurry. And it was really neat too. There was a couple of them that I gave the reading glasses to, that you could see them, squinting and reading, and then you give it to them, and their eyes would go wide, and they go, yeah, I see, it's clear. Yeah, I see. Wow. It was just so cool to see them see clearly. And such a simple, we weren't able to do anything fancy. We said, hey, this is just for reading. This just magnifies a little bit. But we made a few people really happy with that. So you can see their traditional garb, right? They like these hats that are really high, and of course their colorful garments. So here we are back at it. This was what we spent the bulk of our morning. So about 9 to 3, 3:30, we would be building, learning how to build. A lot of us, some people were experienced. Not too bad. So it was amazing, right? We had about 30 of us there, and then we had several of the full-time Maranatha workers that go from country to country. That's their job. They go so many of the people that were working with us were from Mexico. There was a supervisor that came over from Brazil, and then there was some local Peruvian leaders as well. And they had it dialed in. They were ahead of us. So one of the jobs I was doing was doing the translating between Bernie Wiederman, who was kind of our team leader for the construction and communicating to make sure that we were all working together. But it was cool. It was cool to see, many hands make light work and be able to be part of that project and see it advancing. And it was hard work, heavy blocks, and I think something about the altitude made them feel all the more heavy. But this was, I think that at one point they were getting over 100 kids coming to the VBS, which was really exciting for them and everybody that was. I never did make it over for the VBS. I was going between work and preaching and using that time to kind of recollect myself. But this is a group of the community members that had, so the kids from the community that had gone through the VBS that we invited to come for the next Sabbath. So this is the next Sabbath. You can see we've made a little bit of progress on our building there. And this is... So that was cool to have them. That was one of the special musics. This was a special hat they gave me as a gift for being the speaker during the week. So I thought I'd at least sport it for that for an hour there while I hung out with them. But yeah, they're beautiful. They're beautiful garb. They're beautiful garments and incredible. So we kind of came back, I think this was Sabbath afternoon, to do a final photo of it all completed there. And yeah, I think I've got So yeah, we were working, we were going to throw the roof on, but it ended up being the wrong material. Ended up being fiberglass, and we were needing it to be metal, so we weren't able to put the roof on. But it's, yeah, they'll swing back and take care of that. So that's the church building. 21 by 70. Okay, 21 feet by 70. There's.
Is that going to be big classroom?
So the way we were able to work it out is they had a little church building right next to it that they had outgrown, and so this was going to be the new church, and the other building was going to be their Sabbath school. Yeah. And Pathfinder Club.
And we repainted that building.
Right. There was a team of us working to paint the building right next door while we were building this new building here. So there's the team. Yeah, it was just a, quality people, just amazing team to work with. One of the things that amazed me, I don't know what your thoughts were, Tony, but man, I was amazed at how many elderly retired folks. I think, was it 83 was one of the volunteers. There was another couple, Gil, do you know how old Gil is? 80? Okay. So you can see, I was just amazed they were there, first of all. We're at 10,000 feet and working, but they weren't only there, but they were there helping and participating. And I just thought, man, I hope and pray that when I'm 80 years old or 83 years old, I'm still gallivanting the world and building churches.
I have a dear friend who lives in the Walla Walla area. She was dry, but she goes on about 4 of these trips a year.
Wow.
And she's up there in her age. She lost her husband several years ago.
Yeah.
You know any Carol Hargrave?
Yeah. There was a lady similar to that had lost her husband, and this was one of the ways that they had really bonded, was doing Maranatha trips, and so this is one of the things that she wanted to continue to do in honor and remembrance of her late husband. So yeah, this is Gil awesome guy and his wife, and he's catching a little rest as we return. I think that was Sabbath. And one of the things that was really interesting that impacted me, so we went to a little museum, and I just had this in there, is that there was a lot of remnants of paganism, even inside of the Catholic religion there, right? Because most of them have been converted over to Catholicism. But you can see, in fact, I ate next to somebody that was was a Catholic and was actually considering at one point in his life becoming a Jesuit priest. And he said he had attended some of the church services there, the Catholic churches, and he said it's totally foreign. Like it's not like any other version or any other version of Catholicism that he'd ever seen. So there's a lot of syncretism in Peru, a lot of mixing with the local traditions and folklore and pagan beliefs with the Catholic beliefs and things. So it was really strange. There was a lot of idolatry and a lot of images and a lot of. We were in a town called Pisac, and I think it must have been kind of a holy destination. Well, that's the sense that I got, that there was a lot of kind of gypsy, hippie, new age type foreigners that were there. And I think they were there because it was kind of a special spiritual place. And so we were camped out right there, right in this hotel. We basically filled the entire hotel. And there was a little kind of bar or hangout spot right there on the corner. And they would play. I think they were doing drugs, and I think they were playing. Well, I know they were playing. I'm hoping they were doing drugs. No, that doesn't sound right. It seemed like they were. That would explain. But literally for hours upon hours, they would be pounding out the same beat and chanting. And it just felt like we had been. It was hearkening back to their pagan era. That this kind of philosophy and so. The cocoa leaves were a huge thing there, and of course that's where we get cocaine. And having psychedelic and drugs was a big part of their culture. The Incas and the ancient people. And a lot of their religion, their religious beliefs and gods and things had been developed from their psychedelic trips. So a lot of the imagery and the idols and things, that's where that was derived from, is that they would take these mind-altering drugs, they would have these weird hallucinations, and then they would think that they were communicating with the other world. And so they would then create their idols and things to represent some of their hallucinations and so on. So I thought it was really interesting to contrast on certain nights it would be rave music that would go until the wee hours of the night, and other times it would be this kind of very organic, kind of authentic chanting and beating on the drum that seemed to be anybody that could make noise into the mix. But to contrast that, because every morning and every evening we would have group worship. And I wanted to just give you a little sample. So I remember walking in a little bit late to one of the worship services, so you're walking through these these narrow rock streets that are this ancient architecture, and hearing the sound of worship, Christian worship, Adventist worship taking place inside, that was echoing through And I thought, I so prefer that expression of worship. And so this is a...
We have the hymnal number 51, second verse.
The worship was really special. Morning and evening, there was something about the acoustics in that room that we met in, and you're with, of course, vigorous missionary Adventists that are singing with depth of tone of voice, but also with heart. And it was just neat to wonder what the influence of just our singing was having on that town right there. So Machu Picchu, we took Wednesday off. We were thoroughly whooped. We actually, most of us got sick day 1 or day 2. Some day 1, some day 2, some day 3. But we had a pretty, some dysentery was somehow we'd gotten exposed to something, and so some people were trying to work through it. Some people were taking some days off, and everybody was staying within a short distance from the bathroom. And so on Wednesday, it was a nice break to be able to go over to Machu Picchu and to see it's just spectacular, just glorious. And the llamas are abundant in Peru. And there's a llama perched up on one of the ruins there. So that mountain back there was one that they had constructed on up at the very top. And so if you got a special pass and a special guide, you could hike up. Pretty treacherous, as you can imagine, using ropes and things like that to get up there. But you can see the amazing work, the fine work that they would do in these rocks without mortar. Just such, they would take, what would they take? Some kind of sand or something? And they would, over hours and days and weeks, water and smooth out those sides. This is their quarry right there. So it's a huge area with a big bunch of big rocks, and they were sharing how they would crack these huge rocks. So they would chip these holes in there that you can see. There's 3 of them right there. Chip a little entrance steel, and then they would take a block of wood and they would pound it in. That would pound into that side there, and then they would pour water, which would then expand the wood, and it would cause the rock to crack, as you can see has taken place there. So it's just amazing what they were able to do with their rudimentary tools. But one of the reasons they were able to, construct these incredible deals there, they had 3 commandments. The Incas had 3 commandments: don't lie, don't steal, and don't be lazy. And you can see that they were not a lazy people. They were very hard workers, and that was, by design, but also by force. They had a very hierarchical structure, and so the people that were in charge were basically slave masters. You did as they spoke, and they had ultimate power to be able to take your life if they so deemed fit. And so yeah, basically it was slave labor that was constructing these massive and beautiful. You can see just the size of some of these rocks. It's amazing. They would build ramps up to these places, and then they would use ways of, rolling the rocks. Just amazing, yeah. I think so, yeah. Yeah, the terrace, you can see terraces there, but you don't have a real great angle. But yeah, you can imagine in its day. Oh, it looks like I don't have any terraces here, but I have some of the Pisac terraces. So there was another ruin that we got to tour that was just right above where we were staying in Pisac. So there was the city, Pisac, but then there was the ruins of Pisac that were right above us. We were looking at them all week. And on Friday, we were able to go up and see. Yeah, so that's where they would grow their. And you can see how, the warring tribes, there was a reason that they were rather than using the valley floors, they would use, because they were much easier to defend against other tribes that would try to come in and steal their hard work through their agriculture. And so, yeah, there was terraces everywhere. I mean, you'd see them on almost every mountain, and some of them are still being used. It was interesting to learn. So they have 4,000 varieties of potatoes in Peru. And so they would have them. They had them numbered. I don't know how many they had memorized, but they would have them numbered to be able to distinguish. Right, we have russet potatoes and golden and red potatoes and stuff. They have number 135, number 572, number. It's like try to keep that one straight. But they said that the best potatoes are grown at the highest altitude. And so they would, even now in today's age, they would go and plant their potatoes in the highest terraces because they said that the skin is the softest. And it's the most, tender potatoes are grown at the highest altitudes.
So when they built these terraces, they actually, when they built them up, they actually went and got a clay type soil that they laid down that's a couple of feet deep. And then they went and got topsoil and hauled into all of these topsoil, and that's a couple feet deep. And so then they had the water, and they had the water system coming from above and would irrigate every single one of those things. Even now, if they supply the water, they could still, the way that they are made, the way that they develop those, the agriculture was huge for the kids, and they could still plant and grow stuff on those.
Isn't that awesome? Right? Yeah, because it's growing in the ground.
So they actually developed all of the potatoes, but they also ancient grains like quinoa and amaranth, which we ate lots of. They had over 79 different crops that they would grow on those terraces. They were developing different kinds of corn. They have one type of corn that's huge. It's actually the kernels are just like 3 times the size of ours. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Their irrigation was impressive. You can see a little bit of the irrigation right here. You can see, this would have been a place where they could have washed clothes or bathed or whatever, but they had these nice little areas that they had built out of the area there. You can kind of see, if you look closely, they have these cool steps designed into the walls of the terraces so that they can get from one terrace to the other. And yeah, then you can see the water coming down. Oh, maybe so. Yeah. But yeah, the irrigation, it was impressive. They knew what they were doing. So this was further down in the ruins here. This was their religious area. And you can kind of distinguish the religious ruins from the regular ones because you can see that really fine workmanship. And right there, you want to explain that sundial thing?
So on the right-hand side, there's a big kind of rock there, and I don't remember I can't pronounce the name of it. It's a long name, but the priests, so they're south of the equator. So when the sun goes north, people would get afraid that if they did, because the sun was their big, the sun god was their biggest. They believed that the Inca came from the sun, and the sun god was their main head god. And so they had this big rock, and it had a small spot in the middle of it, right up there where you can see that lump. And that was where so when the sun went north, they were afraid that if they didn't appease the god, that the sun would continue to go north and that it would not come back. So the priests, that was the tether stone. The priest would tether and cast spells and tether the sun to hold it so that it wouldn't keep going and that it would come back. And of course, then they would celebrate when they could show that on the rock where the sun was coming back, they would celebrate that they were able to hold the sun and then keep it, and then it would come back for them.
Isn't that fascinating? I mean, think about how much of panic they would have if they were dealing with our variance in the sun, right? They had about 30 minutes variance there.
Pisac in Cusco is only about 13 degrees south of the equator, so they're not very far, so it only varies about 30 minutes one way or the other.
Yeah, so fascinating. Their whole religious system, right? There's that beautiful work there with the rocks. And then speaking of the irrigation system, this was a picture of your irrigation. A lot more there, yeah. I don't know what the percentage or the average is, but...
There they had... it was just at the end of their rainy season. And so that's why everything is green. They said that in June and July, when it's the dry season, that it'll be brown.
Mm.
But they get 50, 60 inches of rain a year.
Okay,
so
wow.
They get plenty of, historically they've gotten a lot of rain to keep everything irrigated.
Okay, yeah, sweet. So this is our hike down the mountain. So we drove up, took a bus up, and then we hiked down back to where we were staying there in Pisac. You can see the stairs going down. There was some of our team walking down them. This is a good view of the town from above. And that's where we were singing our worship, right there. And this is where Rod and I and some of the other people were staying. And that big green area was a beautiful garden, amazing garden that they had been cultivating for many years. This was where we were eating our meals. We had some Bolivian cooks come over. As we saw, Bolivia's right there next door. They came over. Bolivia is kind of the Mexico of South America. In other words, any cheap labor that they're needing, the people that would work the fields or do the menial labor, typically would come from Bolivia. And so they were the kind of migrant workers. They are the migrant workers of South America. And so, yeah, I think they were able to hire them for a pretty reasonable price. This is standing in line, getting ready to eat one of the meals. You can see we had an incredible view. Okay, so we went to a little animal reserve, and you can see... Tell us a little bit about and speak into that so the people online can hear it. Tell us a little bit about the condor.
So this is the Andean condor. Its wingspan, when it opens its wings, is over 10 feet. So about 10 feet 5 inches is the wingspan. And of course, it's one of the symbols of Peru and, of course, the ancient Incas. Unfortunately, the Andean condor is diminishing. It's decreasing its population. A number of these had been injured, and so they had, I think, 11 at this little rehab kind of zoo place. And so, yeah, if you're out in the wild in Peru and you're very lucky, which we happen to be, my family happened to be the first day, we actually were able to see one in the wild soaring. It's pretty impressive. So, yeah.
Just beautiful birds. And here's a Andean bear.
Sometimes polar bears are around. You have the big mostly vegetables, like fruits. Fruits.
Yes.
This is a vicuña. So this is interesting. The wool that comes off of the vicuña, they make the most expensive textiles in the world from this particular kind of wool. It's illegal for them to domesticate vicuña, and so they can't. There's not an easy way to harvest it, so they have to go and capture them in the wild to harvest their wool. And anybody want to? So there was a coat. We were doing some shopping in Cusco. We went into one of these really fancy stores, and we were looking at their different alpaca wool and things. And there was a nice coat about this far down, nice, beautiful wool coat. Does anybody want to guess how much it cost? Yeah, from the vicuña. 50,000. That's a good guess. It was $19,000 for a wool, and you have to get special permitting and things to be able to take it out of the country. It used to be that only the locals, the Quechuan people, were allowed legally to own anything made out of this particular wool. This was a little baby that was born, I think, just hours before we got there. So these were kind of in a reserve. They were kind of rescue animals. And then there was a mountain lion they had in there. Right? So tame. Yeah. There's one of the condors.
That's not what I am, okay? One is of the oldest, like a dragon.
So then Vinicunca was also known as Rainbow Mountain, was one of the locations we went to. And this is at 5,036 meters, which is over 16,000 feet.
16,552.
Good memory. Very good. Yeah, so we're way up there. And man, so we hiked up this little hill, and that was about the best we could do. But man, the wind was insane there. Yeah. No, I'm just teasing. Just teasing. So yeah, llamas everywhere. Amazing how many llamas there were. Yeah, the gravity was a little weird down there too, so I had to keep a hold of things. But this was some llamas here. So you had alpacas, llamas, and vicuña, and they were all a little bit different, but just stunning. So these are the Andes Mountains. Yeah, different mineral content in there that make them just really beautiful. Then you can see that all those little dots there, that's all llamas. Or alpaca, yeah.
With little shepherds.
Yeah.
They all have little shepherds.
Yep.
So it's interesting that the Incas domesticated a number of things, and one of what they domesticated was, of course, the vicuña. They domesticated, and they now have alpacas and llamas that are pretty much domestic. And so you see them out all over, but they're all owned, and they have little shepherds, kind of like sheep. And they'll be wandering off across somewhere, and there's a little shepherd and his dogs with the alpacas and the llamas.
So, right, obviously it's a huge industry. Every store, everywhere is selling alpaca, everything. So then we did a journey down to Lake Titicaca. So we stayed in a city called Puno, and went and saw Euros. So it's an interesting, I think that's the only place in the world, isn't it? Only place in the world where they have created a habitation on the lake itself. And so they were using reeds and some other things, they're able to build their own islands to live on. And we went and toured this because this was, we were the first to build a church here in Uros.
So, and I don't know how much you were going to get into,
No, go ahead.
So the Uros people have been living out on the lake for the last 2,000 to 3,000 years. And of course, it was a self-defense kind of thing. Around Lake Titicaca, the Aymara is the main tribe there. That's south of the Quichua that we were up with northwards. And so they have been living out on the lake. They build their own islands. They have their own houses. There's currently about 75 to 100 islands with people living out there on those islands. And every 15 to 30 days, or 15 to 90 days, depending on the rainy season, they have to put more reeds down to keep that reed mat floating and keep their houses floating, because underneath in the water it rots. So back in 1963, there was missionaries, of course, down there that then went out and started to talk to the Uros people and started the first school in the in the islands, and that was the Adventist school, and that's the only school that is still out there. And so just to the left, that little red building to the left of the church is the school. They currently have about 24 kids who came out and sang to us, 2 teachers. They teach in the Aymara language because the Uros is kind of a lost language. And then, so you can see just to the left, the red building, and then there's a little building behind it. Those are the school buildings. And then in 2005, Maranatha went down there and built this church. That church is floating on pontoons, and it was a very large project trying to get a church that would seat 200 people on aluminum pontoons. But again, that has been there since 2005. And so when we came in to visit them, of course, then the people were there to, welcome us, and Nathan got to give them. And of course, here's some of the church people welcoming us, and then the little kids came over and sang us a song. So actually, Fernando, back in 1910, there was an Aymara gentleman by the name of Camacho who sent over to Bolivia, because Stalls actually first went to Bolivia. They went to La Paz. And in 1910, the pastor and Stall, there was 2 of them that came over and actually baptized 15 people that Camacho had ready for baptism. And there was such a need that there was over 100 people going back to the boat with them saying, please, 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 we want you to come. So the next year, Fernando and Anna Stahl and their 2 children came over in 1910 and started in just south of Puno, which I'm sure he'll get to because we went and saw the mission there. And they started in 1910, or in 1911, the full-time ministry there. And so they were doing, in the contrast, I don't know, you were going to share the contrast. When the Catholics came in the 1500s with with the Spanish, who came and conquered. Pizarro came and conquered the Incas, and the Jesuits came, and the other Catholic missionaries. Unfortunately, the Aymara and the Quechua people, they kept under bondage and servitude, and they were basically slaves and considered beasts. And there was actually an elder who was descendant, and he gave a very passionate talk about how his ancestors, how they didn't view them as anything more than beasts. But when Fernando and his family came over there, the two things that they really started with was health, because they were both trained as nurses, was health and education. That did not make the priests very happy, because they had subservient people and they were basically taking everything from them. So they started schools, and within 7 years, they went from the first 15 people. In 7 years, they had 2,500 people that had been baptized, and they had 46 schools. Most of those schools were being taught by local people that they had trained. So yeah, that was the beginning, and that's why we can go now on a mission trip to Peru, because of that work that Stahl started. And they spent over 30 years in Peru. So.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Yeah, no, it was...
He might have went back. He was about my age. You know, he might be about 90 now. But, yeah, it was his grandparents. I kind of lost track of what I have to do. But I do remember when I went to school, you always speak. Yeah, talked about his grandparents.
That's so cool. Yeah, how many of you guys were familiar with the stalls before today? Yeah.
There's an amazing book that Fernando Stahl wrote after they had left. It's called In the Land of the Incas, and it tells a lot of the stories about starting the mission work down there, and how they, how the people, the Aymara people, and then they didn't get all the way up to Cusco, but he went on horseback. And some of the stories that he has about going for days out on his horse to all the villages and meeting all the people are absolutely amazing. But yeah, he talks about, meeting all these people and how they we want teachers, come teach us, come help us, and how they were just hungry for help and education.
So amazing, and the level of persecution that they were facing as well was pretty intense. If they would find out that some of the local people, some of the indigenous people had learned to write or read, they would cut off their hand, or worse. But yeah, they were beaten, and they were treated as beasts and referred to as beasts. And so it was tremendous, the work that they did in educating the local people, because it really empowered them to be able to break free from that oppression that they were experiencing.
There's still positive benefits then from all that?
Oh, 100%. It completely changed the trajectory of that whole culture, and that it's tremendous. So one of the things that he said is they said that Protestants did in 25 years what Catholicism couldn't do in 400 years. And that was just the level of transformation that they saw in their culture, both in, being sanitary and educated and empowered. So, yeah.
I was just going to say, this where we're all standing is a mat. And when you stand on that mat right there, they've been putting down layers and layers. And when you stand on that, it's a little bit squishy.
I'll show you a video in just a second. Here was our greeting. So they're saying, we give you welcome with all of our heart. And then, here's me walking on the... Isn't that wild? So talk about a lot of work. So every 90 days, right, on the long period, I didn't realize that was 15 to 90, but they're having to replace or put another layer on top. And so they were saying, yeah, we're due for another layer, or else they just sink into the lake. I'll show you in just a second. I've got a little deal there, but there's a picture of the church, inside of the church. And then they had a few special musics for us, so I'll share you. This one was particularly special. They did a few for us, but this is the Maranatha song. And I'll just let... So they're saying, Maranatha, Christ is coming. Maranatha, Christ is coming. He's coming for his people. That gave me chills. It still gives me chills. So cool. It's a biblical term, right? That means Christ is coming. Yeah, Christ is coming. So this was a picture in one of the classrooms there. They had, it's just amazing. So every island has 1 to 3 on average boats of their own, because that's how you have to travel. So the little kids would row their little boats of whatever fashion or form they'd have over here to the school for their classes. We visited one of the islands, or we split our group up and went to do 2 different islands to get a little tour. And here they explained how they built their islands. So you can see that base layer, if I remember correctly, right, in the wet season, it all rises up to the top, this kind of ground there. And so they take saws and they cut chunks. What were the diameters? Like 5 feet by 5 feet, or?
It seemed to me that it was as big as you could cut.
As big a sections as they could. They would cut these portions out, and then they would bring it over and lash those pieces together, and then they would have to put in several anchors, or else they said if they didn't, they would end up in Bolivia. Yeah, the island would just float away. So they would do this base layer that would, be their foundation. Then they would take reeds and altering directions would stack the reeds up. And of course, they would do this every, 15 to 30 or 90 days. And then, so this island would have about a shelf life of about 30 years. So any given generation will have to do this at least twice during their lifetime to start from scratch. And so they have their buildings. This was their presidents. So every island has its own president and its own its own judicial system, or its own kind of hierarchy system on the island. And this was the president's house there. And you can see it's fairly small, but that's by design because they have to move the house to rebuild the island and then move their house back onto the new and improved island. So there's about 2,500 people, more or less, living in this community. I didn't realize 3,000 years old. That's incredible.
Yeah, there's about 2,000 to 4,000 that live on these islands. There's, like he's saying, there's either 1 to 4 families that live on an island, depending on how much they can lash together and build it up. And then there's currently about 75 to 100 islands. And yeah, you have to pick up your house and you have to keep putting reeds under it or it would sink into the lake.
And it's like 2,000
But-
total for all the islands?
Well, so right now, yeah, there's that many that live still out on the islands. And then they're fisher people. They fish in the lake, and then of course sell handicrafts. The women make handicrafts and sell handicrafts. And of course it's a tourist destination because there's nowhere else in the world that's like this. So lots of tourists do go out there. But the reed beds, so the reeds that they're putting down are called tortora reeds. And those, I mean, you could see some of them in that picture. They go for acres.
Yeah, you can see here.
So it's not like they're going to run out of reeds. It's just you have to go cut. And we saw people harvesting boatloads of reeds out there. Like these gentlemen have a boat that's full of reed.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fascinating. And they said it's a dying culture, as you can imagine, because a lot of times they're sending their young people to school in Puno or in Juliaca or in different places, and they start to get used to having firm ground, tierra firma, having like a lot of these, and they've of course grown up with all of the work that entails, and so a lot of them don't want to move back to their community, as you can imagine. It's very unique, very, very interesting. So yeah, Fernando A. Stahl, we went to a museum. It was their home. So this is Anna, and this is Fernando. They were the couple that went down there. This was their home, and it was just a little distance from one of the first Adventist churches in the area, or in Peru. So this was some of their books and their furniture and the saddle, and that flooring that you see there was actually brought down from, I think, Canada is what they said, that they hauled wood all the way down from Canada to be able to build their floor there. This was the church, and this is Tony telling us about a lot of the things you got to hear tonight, which was cool. I'm so glad you were here, Tony. Cool that he buffed up on all that history, just fascinating. And that book, In the Land of the Inca, full of action-packed stories and lots of rich history, Adventist history, and truly changed the trajectory of Peru. It's amazing as Adventists that we played a very important role in the development of their at least their indigenous people. Yeah, no, I think so. What's that? For Adventism, he was, absolutely. Yeah, the first.
The other amazing thing is that back, so when the Spanish arrived in the 1500s, of course you had, and then Stahl didn't arrive until 1910, you had hundreds of years of oppression. But around the turn of the century, there was starting to get, the people, the Amara and the Quechua people, which are the largest indigenous people groups, were like, hey, this is not right. But they didn't have, of course, the education, and they didn't have, they didn't know how to approach that. And so when you look at anthropologists and historians, and you look at all of them, they say that Fernando Stahl, the Stahl family, was instrumental in changing the history of Peru because of the education and because of the health. That not only that, but then they would then teach them about Jesus. But with all of the education, they started then being able to then fight their battles and say and take their case to the court of Peru, the head court, where they could say, look, we have land right, we have rights. And so the timing was right for this change that came through. And so laws were passed during those early 1900s, 1910, 1918. There was some significant laws that were passed that gave those people rights for land, rights for education, rights for freedom of religion, all of those things where the Catholics and the priests had this stranglehold. And again, if you go back and read some of the history and some of the debates, and some of them were not very happy at all and threatened multiple times to kill the Stahls. But I mean, there's some amazing, God saved him multiple times, but the amazing thing too is that when the priests got sick, who was there? Stahl went. They went and they ministered to those people, even though they had been their enemies, and they won a number of them. Now, it's funny when you read his book, there was also a number of them that died mysteriously of mysterious diseases, not because of Stahl. It's just
Judgment.
Yep. Yeah. And so
Absolutely.
Stahl says that because of that, there was a number of even priests that said, I'm not going to fight them. I'm moving. And they would leave. So it's pretty amazing.
So fascinating. And I didn't catch all the details here, but they did have a trap door. That was for safety, wasn't it? So in the house that I showed you, they had a trap door so that they could, and that little door out the front there was one of the entrances into they could go down underneath their house. So if they were having persecution trouble, they could have a place to hide. So yeah, this is the original school building there, and you can see how thick the walls were. That was the way that they built back then. So fascinating. So we went to this place, and then the last day that we were there, we also went to this place, which is now one of the largest, if not the largest, Adventist school in South America. 9,000 students in their university. Interesting, the reason that it has so many is because there was a prominent university in Juliaca, which is where this is located, that went out of business. And so they had several thousand students transfer from that university wholesale over to their university. And so they said only about 10% of the students there are Adventists, which makes it a huge mission field. And so, but beautiful. I mean, they've had a huge influx of tuition and money, and so they're building brand new buildings. It was a beautiful campus, very kind of state of the art. Beautiful lawns and libraries and dormitories, and they've dedicated their amphitheater there to Fernando Stahl. Isn't that powerful? So his work, back in the early 1900s, is now growing in fruition in one of the largest universities. This is just a small distance from where they started that work.
It's just amazing to me that Fernando Stahl and his wife went down there and witnessed and helped the people in basic things, cleanliness, so the health message. They were treating their illnesses, education, and of course telling them about Jesus. Mm-hmm. It's amazing when Pizarro, the Spanish guy, came, what was he looking for? Wealth. He was looking for wealth. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that he found wealth. The Incas gave, because he captured the Inca, the head Inca, and he gave him a room full of gold. And Pizarro ended up killing the Inca anyway, even though he gave him the ransom that he demanded of him. And then he took the wealth, went back and founded Lima. And 10 years later, his partner ended up he ended up killing his partner, and his partner's friends ended up killing him. So what kind of a legacy?
What a contrast. Wow.
Yeah, the contrast that Pizarro came in the name of, Catholicism with all this, we're going to, convert you and everything, and he leaves nothing.
Wow.
But dead people. And Fernando Stahl came in the name of peace, in the name of healing, in the name of Jesus, and has a legacy. And I mean, just the contrast is just amazing to me.
Amen. Absolutely beautiful. So this was one of the buildings that we had a very limited time there. We were on our way to the airport at this point. But they took us through one of the buildings here, which is for their Centro de Simulation, Simulación Clínica. So it's a state-of-the-art medical facility where they train their nurses and soon to be their doctors. This next year, they get their medical education launched to be able to train doctors. But they are able to simulate surgeries and OBGYN, right, births, and incredible technology, and able to have all of this. They also said that they recognize that 90% of the people there are non-Adventist, and so they, throughout the entire campus, they've put these placards up to influence their students to think about Jesus and to come and to know Jesus. So it was, so that was a sample of what we learned and what we did and what we got to see. There was several other things that I didn't get a chance to add, and I thought this was probably going to take longer than an hour, which it did. But any questions before we close? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It was really. I'll add one more detail, and that's that Providence would have it that as we were finishing our evangelistic series, one of the professors from the university in Lima, the Adventist University in Lima, one of the Old Testament theology prophets, professors, thank you, came and was getting ready to do a week of prayer because it was Holy Week, leading up to Easter, and so he came to introduce himself to the people that had been attending my evangelistic series, to invite them to his evangelistic series that started the very next week, and so that was really neat to hand the baton off to him, and he came to the church service as well and helped me to help to read my Bible texts. And then he sent me pictures after his series of a few different baptisms that they were having at the close. So that was just a special cherry on top of the whole experience.
And I was just going to say, as far as the church goes, we took it as far as we could with the walls all the way up to the roof. And like the pastor said, we didn't get to put the roofing on. That was part of the plan, but it was the wrong roof, so they did order that. With our trip, sometimes Maranatha has enough to put up the walls and put up the roof and put the roof on, but another miracle or blessing, God provided enough funds beyond that. With our group that the local in-country team will be able to plaster the inside, so you won't see the brick. And then there's a group that is going to be at a nearby town in June, and they're going to paint it. And then there is the money then for the doors and to finish out the church. In the back of their church, behind the first wall that you could see, there's actually a bathroom on each side, which they did not have any bathroom and only limited electricity to the previous building that they had. It was a bit rudimentary, and the bathroom, the facility that we were using was a little bit sketchy. So anyway, they're going to have bathrooms then and a little pastor study in the back of the church that we were building for them. And so again, hopefully by August, September, it will be completely finished, and then hopefully we'll get some pictures then of the entirely finished. And we actually pulled wires. We put conduit in the walls and pulled wires so that they will actually have some electricity. There is electricity to the site there, and they'll be able to then have some fans or even a projector. They're hoping to have
I think they're going to have television.
Something about this size that they can then project their songs on. And again, we were able to donate for them some chairs and then hymnals and Bibles.
Yeah.
And then also
Yeah. Awesome.
the little reed place, you raise money, but just out of all your pockets, you raise money. I thought that was cool.
Well, yeah, we were able to leave, I think, $1,000 with that group to help them with. They're trying to rebuild their playground, and then the Kalispell Church just decided to fundraise to help support this other church that's going up close by, and that school down there. So yeah, it's neat to see. What was it, 30? Can you remember the number of Adventists in the whole? Was it 500,000 in the entire
country?
of Peru? Yeah,
In the country. And again, Bernie, you guys know Bernie Wiedemann. He and I tried to find this out, but there's 3 unions, and we tried to add the numbers and find the numbers, and we came up with between 450 to 500,000 Adventists currently in Peru.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So yeah, it's
Out of a population, Peru has a population of about 38 million.
38 million.
So
that
there
many,
is still plenty of people. Just saying.
Totally. Yeah. So yeah, they're looking at, and again, they said it's a pretty difficult terrain, just with a lot of syncretism, a lot of Catholicism, a lot of kind of superstition and that kind of thing. But it was really neat to be able to preach to them that God is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, that He is the ruler of the universe, and that we, when we're not living by faith and proclaiming the gospel without shame, we're falling short of God's plan for us and His desire for us, and that He is Almighty. So that's what I shared the entire week with them. So I'd like to just have a little prayer here as we close, that God would continue, the seeds that were planted there would continue to grow and bless generation after generation, if we're here that long, or that it would populate heaven. Gracious Father, what a tremendous blessing that you brought us there safely, that you blessed us with amazing weather throughout, and then that you gave us the strength we needed, the health we needed to be able to complete this drop in the bucket, really, in the world of mission and evangelism. But God, we know it was an important work, and we're so grateful for the lives that we were able to touch and the encouragement that we were able to bring to the group there that is faithfully gathering every Sabbath and engaging with their community. And we're grateful for the baptisms. We're grateful for the enthusiasm and the excitement that we got to see, and the gratitude that we got to see expressed as we were able to be a help to them in your work. So Lord, I pray that their faith would increase evermore, that it would spread like wildfire throughout that community, that church would be outgrown quickly, and that the good news of the gospel of a loving, powerful God would be known and believed by the multitudes. Thank you, Lord. We place them into your hands. We intercede on their behalf. We ask that a special work would continue to be done in their hearts and in their communities. I pray this in Jesus' name.